get to deep dive into DAOs. I'm not going to explain what DAOs are. I assume we're all on the same page with that. But I want to introduce what's up with DAOs on the Near protocol and what we've been up to the past 2 years, basically. And if you want to follow along on Twitter, hit up Starpause and hit up Astro DAO. So before we go too deep, I want to just give an overview of the entire ecosystem of DAOs on Near and how it's structured. It's kind of an inverse pyramid where at the very bottom of this iceberg, we've got the Sputnik smart contracts. And these are intentionally the smallest part, the audited code, like the good stuff that actually runs everything. So those are tried and true. And that's like what everything is built on top of. What I'm most directly involved in is Astro, which is the UI that builds on top of that makes it friendly and easy to use. So it's not only like a responsive phone, tablet, desktop usable website for that, but it's also some middleware tooling that allows a bunch of other tools to easily query the chain and do indexing and things like that. And then around that, there's a lot more being built, like command line tooling, other interfaces like Commonwealth IM. There's a lot of tools for automating what your DAOs want to do. So for example, Croncat allows you to schedule tasks to happen on a regular basis, just like Cron does, except it's on chain. Roke.2 allows you to do streaming payments. There's a multi-call tool that allows you to set up a series or parallel set of calls that you want to make with a single proposal on your DAO. And then there's a bunch of bots that allow you to plug into your DAO, do voting on it. You can keep updated that way, get notifications, and so on. So there's all that going on in the Near ecosystem around DAOs. And every Friday we have a demo day where we show off like different projects that are being built. There's KYC coming together, which gets some people excited and other people dread it. Depends on how much payroll logistics you have to deal with. And then on top of all of that is the biggest layer of all, and that's the DAO incubator, which is a program that we started for incubating DAOs on Near. It really started maybe like a couple months ago. It was really towards the middle of last year that we started the DAO incubator program. And in those few months, we brought in like a ton of DAOs, funded them with over $100,000, and then we're doing the same thing this quarter. So what literally can you do with Sputnik DAO? What are these contracts good for? It's got flexible voting, so you can do seat-based voting, token-weighted voting, voting based on NFT ownership. You can do funding, so things like grants, which are paid in advance, or bounties, which are paid afterwards. And I do encourage people to think about like their payment models when they're forming their DAOs, so that there's less confusion about how you get paid, because that is like a big discussion that happens in the DAO space. Is like, okay, so I want to work for a DAO or do some work, like there's bounties out there, but what if I've got a new idea that's not a bounty? Those things wind up as grants, where you put your idea forward, say what you're going to measure, what's going to happen, and then it goes well, doesn't go well, you've got your grant already. And then there's bounties, which are just like more like gig work, gig economy type stuff. That's what those are good for. And then another super powerful part of Sputnik is the fact that it can call any function on any smart contract. The way that the account model works on Near is every account is named. You get a named account off the bat, whatever your name is .near. And it has sub accounts too. So for your DAO, it's going to live at your DAO.sputnikDAO.near. Everybody gets a name. What lives at that name can be just your wallet, or it could be a whole DAO, but that DAO can act on the chain just like any other wallet could. So literally anything that a single user can do, a DAO can do collectively as a group. And common things we see people doing with that is collecting NFTs, creating NFTs, launching their social tokens, and the list goes on and on. To the point where we're now supporting that in such a capacity that we're starting to build a dApp store of things that people commonly want to do with their DAOs. And then one last bit that's really cool about Sputnik, in addition to all the rest, is that it's upgradable. So in addition to being able to call any function on any other contract, it can call a function on itself to upgrade the factory, or to upgrade DAOs that are like spun out from the factory if people in those DAOs want to adopt code that's been pushed out to the factory. That's an important thing to note as well, is that Sputnik contracts are under a factory model where there's a factory, and when you create a DAO, you own it entirely, it's yours. And that costs about like 5 NIR to set up, so it's a pretty cheap cost. Right now, that's around like 50, 60 US dollars to set up a DAO. And if you go through DAO incubator, then you can have that reimbursed quite easily. So how did we get here? The Sputnik contracts have been around for a while, like I was mentioning. It's been around for about 2 years. And last year, with the V1 contracts, we saw over $12 million in flow. So that was people getting paid out for doing bounties, doing grants, all kinds of work happening through the DAOs in 2021. And then we thought that was great. Like, yeah, things are going well. And then this year hit, and suddenly we launched V2 of the DAO contracts and have over 2 billion locked now in all the different DAOs. A large chunk of that is actually Aurora, which is the EVM that runs on top of NIR, and that is compatible down to like the base token. So if you're not familiar with Aurora, definitely check it out. Redeploying Solidity contracts on Aurora is as simple as reconfigure and deploy. There's not even changing out the base token or anything like that. So Aurora runs their DAO on Astro, and a bunch of other folks too. There's over 277 monthly active DAOs that are engaged in all kinds of activities, and we'll get to case studies. And then there's also Hellborn auditing to make sure that those contracts are actually like buttoned up. And if you want to dig deeper into all the statistics around it, go to DAOstats.io, and you can see who the most active DAOs are, who's got the most users, who's got the most flow in, out, etc. And then V3, well, we'll see where it goes. All right, so that's the contracts. What about this UI? How can anybody use these contracts? Well, you could use the CLI tool if you're a developer in the house. But for most people, and honestly, a large amount of the NIR audience, they like UIs. They're coming from a space of like having a collective in real life and maybe not even being technology people, and for the first time doing blockchain after getting their NIR wallet. So for a lot of people, having a Web 2 like easy application that's good for everyday people is where it's at. And that's what Astro provides. It was designed in collaboration with We3, which is a bunch of ex-IDEO folks. And then it's been developed, and we've continued to iterate on it in an open source manner with Magic powered. And it's live now. You can check it out at AstroDAO.com. And there's also a testnet version. If you really just want to clunk around, you can go to testnet.app.astrodao.com. And as we were working on this with IDEO, we did a bunch of focus groups, and we're really talking to people about like, what are DAOs good for in the world? Like, what are the real world use cases? And we boiled it down to kind of 3 pillars of what the value add of AstroDAO was. And that's to meet people that share the same values as you, to vote and take collaborative action, and then to fund your collective goals. So these are kind of our litmus tests as we're doing all of our design work. Is, does it make these things easier? Is it focused on enabling these things for everyday people? If yes, it's in. If not, maybe we'll put it later. So gonna run through what meet, vote, and fund look like. And while it's just static screenshots, I do encourage everybody to still look at them, or at least glance up and pay attention, because it'll get your visual memory going. And then when you're going in there and interacting with like the new DAO you created or checking out other people's DAOs, you'll already have the visual memory of how to do all these things. So when you're going in for the first time to discover what DAOs are going on, you can sort by newest, the oldest. Maybe you like want to see what's fresh and going to be active, that's upcoming, and just like really looking for new contributors. Maybe you want to be part of something old and established and has a track record. So you can sort it however you want. Maybe you want to go for really big funds. Maybe you want to go for who's got the most members. Maybe you want to go for less members so that your contributions make a bigger difference. All up to you. And then if you want to get like really deep into the stats and really compare like, okay, which one of these DAOs of their activity is income versus outcome? Who's actually paying the most people out? who's really active in governance and like who's doing like actual polling and passing proposals versus just funding. You can kind of see the shape of how people are using their DAOs if you go to DAOstats.io. And if you look at these charts, you'll see groups like Hack, they just once in a while will have something that passes. Whereas something like News is kind of always on. There's a lot of activity, and same with like Marma J you'll see here. So people use DAOs different ways. Generally, at least once a month, people are using their DAOs because they're just in the habit of like weekly pay or monthly payouts and that mindset. But some of them are like a little bit more active. And then once you find a DAO that you like, you can follow it. And what that actually enables is the notifications. So there's a notification system built in. And what this does is it bridges the biggest gap we see in DAO participation, which is forgetting to vote, forgetting that you've got something to do. That's the number one falling off point for people. So getting notifications in was key. If you're interested in a DAO, thinking about maybe joining it, you can hop on the follow list for it, see what's actually happening with it. And then it gives you a better idea of like, oh, I want to be putting my energy here. These people are like really active and there's cool stuff happening. And then any DAOs that you create or are on the council of, you automatically get the notifications as well. And then when it comes to voting, the interface is pretty straightforward. It allows for conversations right on each one of the proposals. So you can go back and forth and have conflict resolution, whatever you want, right on the proposal before making your vote. And then you'll either hit the big green button or the big orange button. We went with orange instead of red, it's less angry. And then when it comes to the funding, if you take a look at the treasuries of any of the DAOs, it displays all fungible tokens, all near, and also all the NFTs that are owned by a DAO. And you get your history, and you can check things out. Like you see the little dip there. That's like if a DAO gives out a loan for some funds or something, and then they come back after the loan is done, or when funds come in, things like that. And then there's an NFT view. So all the DAOs that are collecting NFTs have a way of showing off their collections. Marma J is very active on the NFTs. And then let's do case studies. So that was all kind of abstract, like here's some tooling, here's some cool stuff that's being built. What is this actually being used for? So off the bat, one of the most interesting things happening is the humanitarian causes that are being funded through Astro DAO. Last year, we had over $500,000 donated to relief for flooding in China and also for relief for COVID in both India and Vietnam. So humanitarian causes do really well. There's folks that are building games and dApps of all kinds, and they're using the DAOs for like governance of their projects, what features go in or out, things like that. And also for like managing airdrops if they're going to be rewarding their users and figuring out what metrics to use to reward their users. Shroom Kingdom has done that through their DAO. Nearweek we saw earlier is one of the like always on DAOs. Nearweek is doing a really interesting thing. They're doing news curation with their DAO where every piece of news that gets submitted to them is a proposal. And then if it's new news, then it gets voted up. And if it's old news, then it gets voted down. And that way, like all of the news curation on Near is curated through a DAO. And like Nearweek is awesome. If you're new to Near and you haven't checked it out before, Nearweek is the way to go for like getting acclimated really fast because there's a ton going on, and Nearweek does an excellent job of every week getting you those executive bullets. Like there's 3 bullets of the most important things that happened. Then they've got the long scroll of all the other things that you can get into as well. But definitely check out Nearweek to stay up to date on what's going on in Near. And then creative DAOs are a big one. Probably over half the DAOs on Astro are creative ones. There's Hype DAO, which does like weekly NFT battles, which is kind of like a Photoshop battle, but anything goes as far as how you make it. Just in the end, it has to be an NFT. There's the Near NFT Club, which is like helping artists promote themselves and helping projects promote themselves. So they do like featured artist spotlights and project spotlights, do marketing help for people, and also teach people how to do marketing around NFTs because that's not something that's necessarily easy to figure out. There's Fam Jam, which is a really welcoming, awesome community for queer artists and non-binary artists, and they do a ton of onboarding as well. And then there's KinDAO, which is really focused on in real life activation. So they're working with a lot of like people who are like running their garden and they're not technology people, but they want a way to manage funds for their garden. And different cooperatives like that, like grocery cooperatives, all that kind of stuff. And one of the coolest things coming out of KinDAO is a project where they're helping the unhomed, so underserved people, unhomed, learn how to do NFTs and have that as an additional source of income. And that can sound kind of goofy and like, why would that happen? But honestly, like in San Francisco and LA, a lot of the unhomed are artists and they're people who have been around the area forever and things just haven't worked out. So when they go out and do outreach, and frankly, a lot of these people do have cell phones, they're given a new means of income for themselves and a new way to sustain themselves. So it's really cool work, and they've actually been really successful with the program, and it'll be at Art Basel Miami, I think later this year. And then KinDAO is also so big that it's like spinning out several other things among its projects. And then we have Codamate, which is an art and tech nonprofit that I've been running for the past 11 years as a collective. And the way it works is every year we look at the programming that we've done. It's usually like nightlife stuff, workshops, etc. And then we, as a group, decide like, well, what's interesting? What should we do next year? How can we better serve artists? So now all of that is on chain, which is great because we have a guiding light. Everybody's agreed to it. It's sitting on chain. Everybody knows where we're going this year. And again, we get a litmus test for, is it part of our mission for the year? Or is this a project that's not, or an opportunity that's not aligned with what we're up to? And then we can also put all of that to votes with the community. And it's been a great process of like taking something that's been established and a well-running machine has been running in the black for 11 years, like I said, and now like allowing us to do all our payroll easier, all of our like, after we run a festival, it is usually months of paying out artists to get everything right and doing international and all that. Now with our art shows, especially the ones that we're doing online because of COVID, we're able to just put all of the splits into the contracts so that when the art sells, everybody gets paid. And that includes the people who did the curation work, the people who are actually helping like build out the online galleries and things like that. So the flexible splits and the way that splits for NFTs are actually part of the standard on Near at the protocol level was a big reason that I got into Near in the first place, and why it was so attractive to the nonprofit was to like ease that logistic pain, that administrative overhead of just being able to pay artists out and not have to worry about, okay, is this standard for payouts something that was developed by like this marketplace or a different marketplace and it's not compatible across them. It's just like across the board, it works on all the shops on Near. And then also artists, when we were getting into this about 2 years ago, they were complaining about ecological impact and whether or not that's a real thing. Had to listen to our artists and our constituents and be like, well, let's find something that's green. Near's got the carbon neutral thing going on. So that was another big part of like why we wound up on Near. Music DAOs. Absolutely love all the music DAOs on Near. I'm an electronic music producer myself, so if you check out Star Pause, you'll get the beats. I do weekly beats, and it's all out under Creative Commons, so it's free for remix, reuse, and NFTs, commercial, whatever. Just by attribution. Attribution is paramount. Always give attribution. But there's multiple DAOs that are doing things around music on Near. So NearX Music is kind of the largest holding pen, and Beat DAO is really focused on compilations and beat tapes. Chapter One Foundation is focused on onboarding musicians and is primarily working with ones based out of Africa. And then we've got the environmental DAO. So I was saying earlier, Near's carbon neutral, so it attracts a lot of projects. There's the Clean NFT Guild, which is something that I was paying attention to. It was forming about 2 years ago when I was getting into NFTs too. And the work that they do is so great. They've cataloged every single marketplace across all the chains, and they have people's input on them. It's really an exhaustive effort that has gone in there. And it's such an honor to have them running their DAO on Near. And then there's Sisu, which is also another like multi-chain DAO, and Friendly Sea Creatures, which in addition to doing environmental work, they have like calm space in their Discord, and they're really focused on mental health. And it's something that I think is actually quite needed. There's a lot of ups and downs that people go through. So to have a DAO specifically focused on being friendly and letting people like find their calm spot when things can get crazy and hectic is pretty cool. And then we've got Tank DAO. Tank is basically a generative NFT incubator. It launches projects, so profile picture projects, any kind of generative art project. We put together the smart contracts and a minting site for this, and it's all open source. So this is the technology that like all the generative profile picture projects on Near are using, and we do our payouts. So because we help out projects, we take a percentage of their projects as like an incubator model. And then we're able to pay out like further smart contract development. We're able to pay out project managers. We're able to pay for like artwork and metadata generation and for doing the regional marketing and all of those things. So it's another organization that's running really smoothly as a DAO on Near. And Tank actually, as far as like income goes, has the most incoming transactions out of any other DAO on Near. And let's see, what else do we got? Oh yeah, another awesome thing is like all of the generative art projects that come through Tank, we help them out with their roadmaps and like figuring out what the meaning of their project is, things like that. And usually making a DAO is the first thing. Near is a space that hasn't seen like that many rugs. There hasn't been a lot of that kind of activity. Things aren't too scammy, and we want to keep it that way. So all of the generative art projects that we're working with, we encourage them. The DAO is not a point on the roadmap like after your mint. It's before the mint, so that some portion of your funds go into the DAO, and everybody who's part of the DAO can govern how those funds are used. And we also encourage them as the creators to like take their own cut as well. But for some portion of the funds, we always encourage folks to really do the DAO. There's no reason not to. It takes 5 minutes to set up on AstroDAO, so go for it. And then we've got like, I was talking about the numbers of like, okay, we've got 2 billion locked, but how are we doing on incoming and outgoing transactions? Tank is again the leader, and News has a lot of activity as well. Hack, well, it's a social coin. So people are social around it. And there's a lot of other cool things to check out too. As we were talking about like meeting people and getting acclimated to the space, Open Web Sandbox is a big one. And they've got a Discord where you can go and just like, as an individual contributor, learn where your place is and kind of find your way into the ecosystem. And there's a lot to do in the ecosystem. So we covered off on just like, okay, creative projects and like people building their dApps and game, things like that. But there's also just like skill-based guilds. And all of these people are offering services, and they take payment in Near or other social coins, whatever you want. And it's a really nice way to be able to get help and stay inside the ecosystem when you've got like DAObox around that can help you set up your Swiss Verin if you need like a legal wrapper for your DAO. There's guilds offering UX like AVB over here. And there's guilds doing marketing and growth, development, consulting, really whatever you need help with, you can find it in one of the skills guilds. And if it's not there, maybe you should start it or find somebody to start it. If you go to Near Guilds, you'll see all the different things that people are offering as services. It's quite a list. And I use the words guilds and DAOs interchangeably. Like before every guild and group working on Near had DAOs, they were calling themselves guilds. And then now as DAOs have kind of like matured and they've all rolled into it, they're usually called DAOs, but sometimes they still call themselves guilds. So really same thing in my mind. If you really want to make a distinction, DAOs are just tooling, and whatever else you wrap around it, whether it's a LLC or a guild or anything else, is the business part. Mentioned Open Web Sandbox as being like a great wayfinding spot. If you've got skills and you want to contribute to the ecosystem as an individual contributor or to find your people, Open Web Sandbox is a great place to land. Definitely check it out. And then my favorite guild / DAO is the NearChan one. This was me and a couple friends. We we're anime critiques, so we're critics. We wanted to do it right. We made a Chan for Nier, so now there's Nier Chan, and it's an original character design. She is the unofficial mascot of the chain, definitely not official, and she's under the Creative Commons, but she's still intellectual property. And if you want to grab a free NFT, that's the QR code to hit. And if you go to Nier Chan GitHub, you can also find it there. But yeah, QR codes, scan it, free NFTs. She might be dancing. And this is like one of the examples of how forward thinking the DAOs on Nier are. Like Nier Chan happened months before A16Z wrote their article about how intellectual property was going to be something managed by DAOs for characters like in the future. And I was like, really, the future? I think it's now. So we've gone over some of the cool use cases. Maybe you're inspired. Maybe you've got an idea. Maybe you want to bring your DAO to Nier. Welcome to DAOcubator. DAOcubator was set up specifically for easing the process of onboarding for everybody who's interested in building their project, finding success on Nier. And this can be anything. It can be a social cause. It can be a pet project like NierChan. It can be anything. DAOs are very flexible, and because it's so easy to get onboarded on Nier with like the easy to read wallet name and the fact that you can like do it on your phone, we do see a lot of everyday people picking up DAOs. And so we do see a lot of DAOs that are like, okay, just a group of friends that want to do something together. It's their group chat, and they decide to make a DAO together, and they're aligned in values, but they don't know quite what they're doing yet. And that's okay, because they're just figuring it out. And then eventually they'll come up with something to do with the funds that they've accumulated. But DAOs of all sizes are welcome. It doesn't have to be some like huge vision to be a DAO. And we've got funding tiers. So like for people that are just starting out, maybe it is the group of friends. We can do like a $1,000 grant just so that people are rewarded for their time of like figuring out how DAOs work, because it is work to like figure all this stuff out and get set up and have a little bit of a kitty. And then we do grants up to like 5,000 and then 10,000 based on like the roadmap and the metrics that somebody is showing us with what they see for their growth and engagement into the future. And then how do we get all those people through the DAOcubator? With DAO structures. So here's a little workshop that happened in San Francisco. We were out on a cabana during COVID when we couldn't meet inside, and everybody's setting up DAOs on their phones, on their tablets. It was a great time. We did like 10 DAOs that day, and a lot of them went on to do great things. Like this is where Kindness Grocery Co-op and FamJam started. So this program we found to be really successful. And as I was saying, like in the last quarter of last year, we were able to distribute about $100,000 of funding to these different DAOs. But the demand that we have for this is through the roof. So what we're doing next is enabling a whole new model where there will be DAOcubators of DAOcubators, and these DAO structures will be enabled to go and run their own programs, find people, and provide them with funding. So we've already got like our first set of DAO structures. We've got Ankit, Yue, Aaron, Chloe, Isaiah, and all of these people. Oh, I got Aaron's picture wrong. Aaron, I'm so sorry. Maybe cute. But yeah, all these people are great instructors. They've all shown potential as leaders in the DAO space. And what we're looking for, or what those people can do, what it means to be a DAO structure, what it enables, what the reward is for having this like esteemed position is, I mean, it's small stuff like just governing the DAOcubator. Like, what are we going to do with this $100,000 of funding that we have at the moment? It allows us to curate the DAO kit, which is it's a docket of things that you do to become a DAO structure. So there's like a checklist of different things that you can do to be successful, and that's a curated list. So it's really a peer designed program. And then kind of like heavier responsibilities are organizing events, hosting office hours, onboarding new DAOs, going through the logistics with them. And then when it gets on the larger scale, like people can run their own projects, start their own DApp, start their own company, lead their own initiatives, or sit as the chair of the working group that drives all of this forward, all this collaboration forward. And I mentioned the DAO kit. There's different size work. So this is I'm a PM, and I like encouraging people to think about the size of work, and the DAO kit has that built into it with small, medium, and large tasks, which are rewarded differently. So you do your tasks and you add up how much like points you've earned, and that's when you can put a proposal to the council and say, hey, I'm ready to be a DAO instructor. So it can be really small things. You can get started just turning on notifications for AstroDAO on Twitter and showing that in a proposal and getting the checkoff on it. Or you can do something really big, like actually like file an issue with AstroDAO, which is real work. Like it takes time after you've encountered a bug or some rough edge to go through and document it and write it down. So we want to reward people for that. Presenting DAOs all over the place, and creating a DAO, like test DAOs and playing around with configurations of DAOs are all things that we reward the instructors for, the DAO instructors, so that when they are in a position of being able to help other people, they have the full 9 yards of like everything that they can do. One of the medium ones that I'm a big fan of is Neardrop.io. Neardrop is a really easy way of onboarding people to Near. If you want a Near wallet or anything, just let me know and I'll hook you up. Neardrop allows you to make drops of Near with a QR code that lets somebody claim it. And if they already have a wallet, they just get the Near that's inside of it. If they don't have it yet, then it lets them sign up with their name and has some Near in there so they can get started and go buy one of the less expensive NFTs on Paras or mess around with a DAO, whatever. And then the big alpha. One more announcement, one more thing. To roll out the DAO incubator program, Astro is partnering with ASAC, which is the #1 NFT project on Near right now with over 1.5 million in volume, and just a great community. And we're going to be working together to roll this out and bring on as many DAO instructors as we can. So if you want to have a lot of fun, come check out our rollout of the DAO incubator with ASAC and AstroDAO. Thank you for listening. And also, Near Edit Denver! Thank you.